Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lori Harris, and I'm the host of She Has Something to Say. Today, I couldn't be more thrilled. I have somebody who's just supercalifragilistic expialidocious, I promise you. And her name is Stephanie Tice. Stephanie is just a phenomenon. This lady in her career and her mindset is just beautiful. It's open. And I got to tell you, everything she sets her mind to, she touches with grace and with beauty and with love. And it just turns into some fabulous things. And we're going to get to talk about that. Currently, she is the executive music producer of No Border Blues. And she is an author. She is also a radio host. She has been very impactful with children and youth, thousands, by the way, as a school counselor for many years. And then prior to that, she is a well-known techie out of the California territory. And so it is my honor, to introduce you to Stephanie Tice. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Lori. And hey, we did some of that tech stuff together back at the San Jose Unified School District many years ago. So that was pretty good times. But thank you for having me on this amazing video broadcast that honors women and what they're doing all around the world. I just feel very honored that we get to talk today.
Yeah, she does have something to say, and I want you to tell us about that. So just initially, just talk a little bit about yourself and share with us who you are.
Wow. Okay. Well, let me start at, kind of back in the 90s. I was living in Norway. I was raising my two children there, and I met a very amazing woman by the name of Evelyn Linder, and she headed up the Human Dignity and Humiliations Foundation. And I got really interested in sort of dignity issues and humiliation issues being so pertinent to relationships, both, countrywide, locally, and also personal relationships. So out of that, I attended many, many seminars around the world that organization sponsored. And I also got inspired by Dr. Robert Fuller, who wrote the Somebodies and Nobodies book. And Somebodies and Nobodies is that feeling like you can walk into a room and just be nobodied by people because of their rank, and it was the idea of rankism. So this was very profound for me. I was working at an elementary school at the time, and I saw a lot of things going on with bullying and within children that I thought, what can I do to change the dynamic of this? So that's where the authorship comes in, and I wrote the Dignity Rocks book, which was first called The Somebodies and Nobodies, and was responses from children that I had asked them, complete the sentence. I feel like nobody when, and I feel like somebody when. And that's where the idea came out. And these are all 3rd to 5th graders. And I got unbelievable responses. Some of them were so heavy that I couldn't really print them in the book. And we had to attend to them right away because they were sexual in nature or beating in nature or things that obviously a child was being abused. So it was an eye-opener for me. And so I did start that book, The Dignity Rocks, and I went around to high schools and elementary schools with that book and had teachers create their own book in their room about the somebody and nobody concept, and then address those issues, because sometimes it was just really small things. For example, one of the children said, I feel like nobody because my clothes are dirty or something like that. And we found out he was sleeping in the car with his mother because she had become homeless. So as a group, we were able to get her out of that position. And you have to be very careful about offering help because people are very proud. So it became a way of understanding humiliation and how people feel when they feel like nobody, and then just embracing that we're all somebody, and it's okay.
Right.
So that took me to, I spoke at the United Nations University of Peace in Costa Rica. I was able to go to Paris, and I met the Dalai Lama. All these things came out of it by just sort of being interested in the concept of dignity being an important aspect of how we interact with each other in the world. So that was my time during elementary school. And then I transitioned into going to high school counseling. So I went back to school and got my degree at Notre Dame de Namur in counseling. And, I just started counseling teenagers and getting them off to college, and also replicated the idea of the somebody and nobody concept. But with teenagers, it was so much more complex. There was a lot of race issues, gender issues. I went and rescued one girl from her house who had been being abused by her stepfather and had a knife pulled on me. And I was just like, you ain't touching her no more, and got her to a safe haven with her aunt. But, you run across a lot of different issues when children can express themselves anonymously too. So a lot of this was anonymous, and they would just send me information. And so I worked with a lot of high schools and spoke at their high school level. So that took me into, 2005 is when I did the Dignity Rocks book. And then from there, I got really interested in music. I've always been interested in music, Middle Eastern music mostly, but when I moved to Hawaii, I became a DJ at KKCR, and I was a blues DJ, and I realized I didn't know very much about blues. And so I had a 2-hour program, and I would, research it because you have access to all these old albums, and I started to get the love of where blues came from and is about, and it's like a part of American history that's very profound and very sensitive. It's Black music that was born out of, crop sharing and the population not being able to express themselves. And so it has a deep-rooted foundation in our history, but it also has a quality to it that everybody loves. So from my DJ experience, I went on to produce 4 albums. The first, this album I co-produced with Johnny Bergen, Neoprene Fedora, which was sort of his white album, I guess. He left Chicago, and so part of production is to listen to the artists and take their work and see how it's going to be presented to the world in the best way. So a lot of it's listening to the songs and putting them in certain orders and eliminating songs. And as a producer, you have to be very objective and sensitive to the artists at the same time. So this was my first co-production CD. And then I produced Howlin' at Greaseland. Now this one has 23 musicians on it. Okay, which is a bit like herding cats, a little bit, because you have to have a studio, people are going in and out of the studio. So it was a real organizational wake-up call for me to get this one produced. But the beauty of this one is that I have a lot of old timers on it, like Taildragger and a few others that are well-known legends. And they talk about Howlin' Wolf, who is a tribute to one of the founders of blues in America. They talk about knowing him or a little tidbit information. And we sandwich that in between the songs. So you'll hear Taildragger was named by Howlin' Wolf because he was late to rehearsal one day. And Howlin' said, you're just dragging your tail. I'm going to call you Taildragger. So these are pieces of information that we need to know. It's about the legends and what it's really like to be a musician and to be in the studios and things. So this one was nominated for a BMA. which is a blues music award, which is kind of like our Grammys in Memphis for best traditional blues album. So that was a great honor for me for my second one to be doing that. And then the third one that I co-produced, mostly produced, but co-produced because Mr. Bergen put together all the musicians. But this has Charlie Musselwhite on, who's one of our legends, harmonica player, Ray Gordon, and another woman, Nancy Wright. And what I love about this is it's Johnny's first collaboration really with women. And I thought this is the time, this is the place to just really bring in those other musicians, because women are underrepresented in this industry as producers, as CEOs, as musicians. So this wasn't just a singer. You see a lot of blues women singers. This was also Nancy Wright, who plays saxophone. And it was also with songwriting. So it has an enrichment in it that I hadn't seen in him as an artist before. And this has gotten a lot of worldwide recognition, you know, #1 on the charts in Australia, et cetera, et cetera. But also just collaborating with Charlie Musselwhite. And talk about strong women. Charlie Musselwhite's wife is Henry Musselwhite. And the way that this album happened, where we were at dinner, she's a beautiful, strong, lovely woman. And we were having dinner and she was looking at Charlie Musselwhite and Johnny, and she looked over at me and she said, "When was the last time Johnny did a live album?" And I said, "How long ago was that?" Johnny goes, 20 years. And she looked at me and she said, "He should do a live album. You start working on that."
Right.
And I went, "Okay, Henry." And I pulled it together. And, you know, we released this one last year. And then this one is the last one that I completely produced myself. And this is Johnny with 12 Japanese musicians that was recorded in Osaka. And it's the first of its kind collaboration of sort of the underground, fabulous Japanese musicians. And I went there in 2018 and met a lot of them. Johnny had been going there for 4 trips or so. And I said, I've got to record these people with you. And he didn't want it to be about him. He wanted it to be about them and the music and this sort of collaboration and inspiration all over the world, that people love the blues. And I was curious, as being an academic a little bit and a researcher a little bit, why do people play the blues in Osaka, Japan? And how did they get to know it? So I'm sort of doing a similar thing that you're doing, is I'm interviewing some of the women on the album and getting their history and what inspired them and why the blues and why they play it. So I have a little side project going on there. But No Border Blues has 12 musicians and 4 of them are women. So I have a woman drummer, a woman bass player, a woman guitar, and a woman keyboardist. And so there's been nothing like this in the blues community that's been recorded that has women. And so I'm very proud of Delmark Records, which is the probably most well-known record company for the blues that's based in Chicago. And their new CEO is a woman, and her name is Julia Miller. And I played this for her, and you know, I was worried because there's one song in Japanese, but it's all about tonality. And so, you know, she listened to it and she got out the contract and said, "Sign it." And that was it. So I'm very excited about this release, Lori. This is kind of like my baby. And so my project is No Border Blues Worldwide. So I have a website. It's called noborderblues.com. It's in the making right now. It's coming out of sprout to a plant. So they will have some of these artists that are on this album and who I meet along the way. And I interview them and find out, why do you play the blues? You know, and it's phenomenal. It will be like somebody's father got a B.B. King record and brought it back, and that's the only record they had in the house. And this this 8-year-old boy played that record 10,000 times and plays harmonica now to it, you know? So the appreciation comes in all these different sprouts. And I think that within itself is a fascinating story for sure. So that's kind of about who I am. I get inspired. I think I get inspired by all the different characters I meet along the way. I love to travel. I've been on the road 2 years. I've only been at my house. This is the longest time, and that's because I'm on timeout, you know, on lockdown, quarantine. Otherwise, I'd be on the road because I was due to be in Europe and due to be in Japan. And instead of just, you know, being sad about it, I'll do all that next year. And I've been able to research a lot of things and just get a little bit more acquainted with, you know, like things like this, streaming and things like that. And also the plight of our musicians right now. A lot of them, you know, dependent completely on touring. And so they're in dire straits. So a lot of organizations are helping out musicians. I've been looking into that as well.
What are some of the ways that musicians right now are adapting, or that they're actually showing their resilience and still being able to migrate through this time and create that economy for themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a live streaming. They're doing concerts live streaming, and then people can PayPal them or Venmo them or do a tip thing, and they'll do it once a week, or they'll do it through an organization. So one of the things I'll be doing is I'm going back to Denmark in July, and Johnny has one of the musicians on the album that he'll be doing a live stream. And, you know, you can practice social distancing and have musicians, and it's mostly live stream. The other thing that he has done is instruction. So he's paired up with the Chicago boot camp for guitar. And so he does a song a week and breaks it down for students. And then we post that on YouTube, and, you know, there's a mechanism for payback. So I think live streaming really is it. People are selling t-shirts and their albums, of course, but for actually getting your music out, it's, you know, Facebook live stream, or some of these Don't Let the Blues Die sort of websites that are streaming live and contacting artists. But it's tough right now. And each state is opening up, you know, and some bars are opening up, but I just, you know, you have to be really careful and conscious. So, you know, no one's like enthusiastically going on the road. I mean, I'm going to Chicago and I have my, you know, mask, and I'm doing, you know, my sanitizer. It's just, it's a new world, but you have to look at it like it's also really a great time to assess our world and what your place is in it. So
I've always known you to be a maximizer. I've always known you to be one to adapt pretty easily and be pretty flexible about things and be able to navigate those waves as they come. So it's exciting to hear that. But behind that, though, what motivates you? What is it that keeps that flywheel moving for you?
Well, for right now, what motivates me is I want people to be heard, their music. And there's only so many ways you can get music to be heard, you know, outlets. So when you do bring people together and then you have this format to present to the world, the chances are more people will hear your music. So my motivation is their dedication and artistry motivates me to, you know, pull it all together, because that's what a producer does. You know, when I was there, I was hand cherry picking groups that I thought would work well together, and then depending on the expertise of Johnny, who's been in the business 30 years, saying, yeah, you know, this would be good combination. And, you know, you have to stand back and let it create itself. And that's really the beauty of it, because the best leadership is not to lead. You know that. It's to let everybody just incubate together, and all that synergy and energy just coagulates, and it's a beautiful thing. So that really motivates me. And what's motivating me right now, I think, is I see true change, not just in this obvious change about racism, but other changes about priorities and goodness and our foundation and what makes us tick. And music is a big part of that. Music is a big part of it. And the fact that this is called No Border Blues, there is no border to the blues. There is no border to flus. There is no, that's my other little motto. There is no borders. And if we can recognize that some of these musicians have legitimacy just because they're honoring our past, you know, they're honoring these legends in our past. So I think it's a great time, and it's really, yeah, I haven't been too down about being at home a lot, because I've been able to listen to a heck of a lot of music.
So I want you to share with our audience too some of the ways that they can connect with you, and not just your website. I'm talking about some of the shows that you produce and some of the things that you do on Facebook that allow you to connect with thousands of individuals, tens of thousands around the world, almost daily. You do a lot of this stuff, maybe daily, maybe weekly, but it is amazing the audience that you have and the impact that you're making.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, there's a couple of ways, a couple of things that are in the works. And one of the things is I'm going to make on Facebook a No Border Blues page. I'll be doing that this weekend. So they'll be able to go to No Border Blues, and I'll be doing live. I'm going to showcase each week a new group from around the world. I have some Swedish, Norwegian, Italians, Spanish, all kinds, and Japanese. So I'll take a CD and some song and tell people about the musicians. So I'm trying to do that once a week. I also broadcast live every Tuesday and do Ta-Ta Tuesday with Basking in the Blues, which is now going to be No Border Blues Reviews. And I take, you know, new music that's coming out and talk about it. Usually play one or two songs and just talk about either the lyrics or the artists themselves. And that's every Tuesday, and I go live on Facebook. So that's primarily where I'm going to go, but I'm going to get a YouTube channel too. But you know, Lori, it's so much stuff. I need a social media manager.
Well, you know, if somebody sees this, you may get one, girl.
But I have about 5,000 followers, you know, on Facebook, my Facebook page. But I still have room for more, so people can find me at Stephanie Tice, and then they'll be able to just go on to noborderblues.com, and that will have a history of No Border Blues. Also, historical content of why the blues started in Japan, for example. I had a wonderful researcher. He's sort of the auditor of blues history, works for Delmark Groove Records. And he wrote up a little bit about the history of blues in Japan, starting in the 50s and 60s, and actual concerts that were there with Otis Rush or, you know, B.B. King, and how that influenced a very small group of people that grew. And now it's 3 generations of blues. And you can trace it back to these concerts or these particular albums. And that's what's fascinating to me, is to actually trace the history of how it spread around the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's so many beautiful messages in those songs, and the music as well tells the story. What I find fascinating about you is, you know, your journey, the way that you've lived your life, and the path that you've journeyed through. You've always had arts in you. You've danced. You're a well-known belly dancer. You've done so many different things. Share your passion behind just the arts in general, and talk about a little bit about some of that.
Okay, and you know, I was influenced in California during the time that belly dance was really popular with the Renaissance Fair. And I studied with Jamila Salampour, who was sort of this phenomenal woman that studied Egyptian dance and also created a group called Ball and Knot. And I just, again, it was a a way of expressing myself and listening to music. And then I started differentiating between Egyptian music, Turkish music, Arabic music, and why do people belly dance? It was the same question. How did this ancient dance that was so sacred and sort of women concentrated come to the United States? And it turned out it was the World's Fair, back in 1920s in New York, where there was, the World's Fair had these venues, and one of them was the Tunisian dancers. And so you can start, and Jamila was really good about teaching the history. And I think for me, it's that link. I feel linked to the past with the present and the future. It's all linked together, and you feel like you have all this history behind you, then you interpret it for what it is for you now, and then you can take it forward whatever way you want. Right. So I was inspired by that. And when I lived in Norway like 10 years, and I was raising my girls, but during that time I opened a dance studio in my basement. And well, why not, Lori?
It's you.
And I had all these Norwegian women, and belly dance is not exactly a Nordic cultural thing, right?
Right.
Who were interested in belly dance. And I had the first belly dance troupe that performed at the Oslo concert hall and playing finger cymbals, And so I just thought it was fascinating. Why are they fascinated? So I went to Egypt with 3 Norwegian girls, and we went to study with a Egyptian instructor, and we rode camels at midnight at the pyramids, with our veils.
Fun.
No, that was fun. Yeah. So I've been interested in dance and the arts. And then, the transition into writing came out of just being inspired by a woman, Evelyn Linder, who was doing so much work. She had gotten the first PhD in history on humiliation. And I thought, humiliation, what is that? So it was just that word and the concept, it was so foreign to me. And instead of being afraid of things or not wanting to understand them because you don't, I'm more of the person I don't know anything about this, so I'm going to research it. And that's the same with blues music. I just sort of got the DJ job, which, being a DJ on a tropical island, come on. That was just too fun, but it was blues. And I was like, okay, well, I'll just research this. So I had, it was 10 to midnight. The whole island was asleep. I probably had 30 listeners at that time, but who the hell cares? I was just able to go through every CD or these old LPs, and it was like a light bulb went off. And I went, this is phenomenal history. This is a foundation of our country. It comes out of misery, suffering, and hope. It's the original silver lining, because that's all they had at that time because of the magnitude of suffering and racism. The silver lining was they could do their music. And that really inspired. So I think these things that I don't understand very well, I get inspired by, and it takes me to a new plateau of research that something goes off in me. And I like No Border Blues when I went to Japan, and I just saw all these phenomenal blues artists. And if you closed your eyes, you would think you were in a club in Chicago. And I thought, man, I love this. What can I do with this? So that's it.
So you've talked about Evelyn Linder as somebody who's really been kind of a heroine for you. Is there anyone else?
Well, Dr. Robert Fuller
yes.
is a professor that wrote the Somebodies and Nobodies book and All Rise, and sort of coined the phrase about Rankism, which you can kind of look up. And it's the idea that you know, rankism, we all have rank in society, but it's like when you use the power of your rank in order to nobody or humiliate other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so rankism as an idea, and I saw him speak in Paris, and he's the one that sort of said, well, you're in elementary school. I bet there's a lot of somebody and nobody going on there. And I said, yeah, there is. And so he said, you know, think about that. So that I went back, and that's when I just wrote on the board, I feel like nobody, I feel like somebody, and told kids to complete it in a sentence. And I worked with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders on typewriters, I mean, on computers. And I was teaching them how to type. And so they would type it up and put it in a basket. And at the end of the year, I had a stack of these nobody somebody statements from 3rd to 5th graders without their name. I want it to be completely anonymous. And I thought, I'll take it over at the holidays, I'll take it home. And I had this stack, and I went through it, and I was just in tears and also inspired, because they were so profound and real. You know, I feel like nobody when I'm me. I feel like somebody when I'm you. You know, things like that just struck me. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? So I remember the day I went up to Berkeley where Dr. Fuller lived, and I had all those in a binder. I put them in a nice binder, and I brought them up to him. I said, I have something I want you to see. And he said, sure, come up. So I'm in this old Victorian with this, you know, professor who's just phenomenal, you know, and I'm pretty intimidated. And I hand him the binder, and we're sitting there, and it was the longest freaking hour of my life. I had a cup of tea, you know, and he had his glasses on, like, you know, this, and he's just reading each page and turning and turning. And I'm dying. I'm thinking, oh, this was really a stupid idea. And so at the end of it, he closed the binder very slowly, took off his glasses. He turned it sideways like this, and he handed it to me, and he said, this is your life's work. Get it published.
Wow.
And that was it.
Nice.
And I did.
Nice.
He said, this is what it's about. If we can change it at this level, if we can recognize that we are, you know, bullying and humiliating children at such a deep level, and there's things you can do to change that scenario, then let's do it.
Yes. Yes.
So we did small things at recess that came up, because I took it to the principal and I said, read these. What can we do? There's some things that we can address in the school right now. And she read them, and she understood, and we made changes. We made changes at the recess. We made a very small change, but you understand this. People would come to school that were having birthday parties, and they would pass out invitations and leave out children.
Right.
And that was one of the things one of the kids said. I feel like nobody when I don't get invited to my classmate's birthday party. So we made a small change like that, you know, if you're going to do this and not include everyone, please don't do it, you know, and invite the children separately.
Right.
So that someone doesn't feel like they're not good enough to go to your party when they're in 3rd grade and they don't understand the dynamics of society, let alone that. So yeah, there was 4 or 5 things that we implemented at that level. So I could see how such small recognition of people's suffering or their discomfort, that what we can do as individuals to change that dynamic. And that was important to me, I think.
Well, you're still doing that, definitely, as a producer of music and a global adventure as well. And the people that you're bringing in and connecting and infusing and sharing is quite profound. I'm curious about you. What has been maybe one, if not two, one of your life-defining moments?
Well, I think becoming a mother,
yes,
is a defining moment, because the responsibility just is huge. I'm happy to report everybody's still alive, my children. I was able to, you know, get them fed, get them to school, and not lose them, you know, along the way. I mean, it's wonderful and it's terrifying as well, but it does give you a lot of empathy for the rest of the world and what women have to go through in war zones and those kind of places. I got very inspired by Zainab Salbi. She ran the organization that you write letters to women in other places. I went to Washington, D.C. and wrote an article about her. I heard her on the radio, and I think that was a defining moment for her. For me personally, it was right after 9/11, and she was getting on a plane and going to Afghanistan and getting supplies and things to the women in the refugee camps. And I was just like, man, you are badass.
Right.
And I think that that's a defining moment for me when I jumped from being so safe to an idea that, yeah, I could do this. And I went and talked to her and interviewed her, and I was going to go to Afghanistan with her and ride horses over the border. But my husband at the time said, nix on that idea. You've got two small toddlers. So I didn't end up doing that, but that was a defining moment. I think that she showed me how empowering a woman can be, and that ideas can come out of you and actually work. And that's what she did. She did a lot of micro loaning of women and started up things all over the world that empowered women to have better lives.
We need to
interview. So I think that's a really defining moment.
Yeah.
Is every time I meet people like that have these ideas that just spread everywhere. And I think, you know, you don't just have to be behind it. You can be in front of it. You can have your own ideas and make your own companies and make a difference in your world. And so
you're leading me right into, what would you say to younger girls and younger students today? What advice would you give them?
You know, I've been really struggling because, you know, I was a high school counselor, and this year a lot of the high school students didn't get to graduate, and I thought, what kind of impact is this going to have on the younger people? Because that 18 to 21-year-old age right then, and I used to encourage a lot of my students to take the first year off from college and go and travel and do a sister volunteer thing where you could volunteer places. So I would think my advice is to really embrace your own creativity in this new emerging world, because there's going to be a lot of needs in a lot of different places. And really, if you understand technologies and how to get your word out and being creative, you can make a living at it. And don't be so zoned in like you have to have a career and a living that's going to pay the bills. No, I think that I would advise them, don't go for the zeros, you know, after, you know, just don't go for how many zeros you have in your life, you know, because they're just zeros. Really, that worth is something so much deeper and so much more profound. I think one of your questions we talked a little bit about beforehand was, what would you say to your younger self?
Yes.
That younger person. And I think I would say, and I would say this to a lot of people, is follow your intuition, because we think too much up here, and our intuition is really, really good at when you get to the crossroads and saying, go down that path and go down that path. Right. And, you know, with No Border Blues, I can remember the moment in Japan that I followed my intuition. And I just said, I'm going to record next year, so be prepared. And all these people were like, yeah, right, you'll be back. I mean, they really hoped that I'd pull it off. And it went like this. And I think when you do follow your intuition and you don't have a lot of resistance coming back, that's a good indicator. But also, when you do have this resistance coming back, you can gauge whether you want to turn around, you want to build a bridge to jump over it, or if you want to blow that resistance up. There's 3 different choices to intuition. and how strongly you feel it. And if you do have a strong intuition, don't give up on your intuition, because people will tell you you're full of crap and, oh, that's too risky. You know, people were like, Japanese blues artists? And I was, yeah, Japanese blues artists. It just
Right.
happens to be #2 in Australia right now, and we're already got 7 reviews. Yeah. So
Brilliant.
and, you know, I learned a lot about organization really matters. You know, however you want to put that in context, whatever works for you, you better be a little organized these days, because there's so much out there that you really need to attend to.
Right.
If you want to be successful in getting your product out, your word out, your enthusiasm out, you know, you have to be a little organized these days. You can't just, it just doesn't happen by itself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to connect with people. You have to know the technologies. You have to pick your platforms really well and really keep your content up to date. That's why I do my weekly thing. You know, I go to some of these websites of these musicians and I go, babe, you're never going to get anywhere with your music. You haven't updated this thing in 5 years.
Right.
Or when I click on it, all the links don't work, you know? So
Right.
you really do have to tend to those things, because younger people, you know, now they're really into it. You know, my daughter, she's got her Instagram and she's all over the place. She knows how to maneuver through it. And if I'm doing something really stupid, she's just like, whoa, stop, mom, this, don't do that, you know? So listen to the younger generation who's grown up with this stuff,
Right.
take input, and really kind of keep yourself up to date, I think.
Well, I just want to say thank you. How can people connect with you?
Right now on Facebook, Stephanie Tice. Find me and friend me. I have like 100 people left that I could friend. And then you can also go to www.noborderblues.com and sign up for my email list. And I'll be sending out newsletters probably once a month, featuring artists or music that I've heard around the world. And also my schedule. I'm gonna be touring probably at the end of the year. I'm not quite sure yet, because Europe is opening up, probably Italy or Spain. There's an Italian group called Jesus on a Tortilla that I want to go and interview.
Nice. I
And
can't
then
wait.
there's like Norwegians called the Jelly Roll Men. And, you know, these are all blues guys. I mean, they come to Memphis like it's a Mecca, you know, and they go and visit all the grave sites for Robert Johnson. And it's like a holy Mecca to them to come to our country and follow Route 66 across the country. I think that's fascinating. It's like, why, you know, what has motivated you? So I'm going to continue my journey on that. For sure.
I can't wait. I can't wait for the live inside the cemetery, and you're just going from grave to grave telling stories. I got it. I see you there. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and these stories are timeless.
Yeah.
You know, this story of this foundation of blues in our country is a fascinating, sorrowful, but inspiring story. And I think we can all learn from it.
Right. Absolutely. Stephanie, I just love you. Thank you.
I love you.
Thank you.
I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for that beautiful energy. It's so amazing. You touch people and you don't even know it, girl.
Oh, thank you so much, Lori. We'll get together soon when I'm out on the East Coast. Let's do it again.
I love it. I love it.
Okay.
And so everyone, She Has Something to Say. And thank you again, Stephanie Tice from No Borders Blues. So thank you, and everybody have a blessed day.
You too. Take care, Lori. Thank you for what you do, babe.